I love my baby, I'm still learning how. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Stay with me. We'll beat these
Hi, my name is Dan Fox. I'm part of Boulder Psychological Services, and this is a presentation of our Pathways to Parenting Success series. We've got a great group of expert panelists tonight. They are talking about technology's impact on child socialization, and I want to get right started with them with introductions and some questions for each of them. So, Christy Gestall. She is an MA, LPC, and RPT. She started the Boulder Center for Play Therapy in 2008 with a mission to provide the Boulder community with the premier center for therapy with a uniquely play-filled and open environment focused on allowing natural healing to take place. Christy graduated from Naropa University with a master's degree in counseling psychology. She completed a distinguished internship with Access Counseling where she studied experiential play therapy. She is a licensed professional counselor and registered play therapist, also a member of the Colorado Association for Play Therapy and the Boulder Psychotherapy Institute. Thanks for being here, Christy.
Thank you, Dan.
So, Christy, I wanted to have you start us off by helping to define what child socialization is all about and what are the different modes of relating to technology.
Great. Well, I think it's really important actually to define this term socialization that we talk about often with children. What does it mean to socialize our children? The first piece is that socialization is really about relationship, right? It's about relating to other human beings. And in order to be able to relate to other human beings, we actually have to be able to relate first to ourselves. And by relate, I really mean, okay, so can I connect? And by connect, to parse it out even further, I mean, can I be present with what's happening for me and be present with you? So when we're talking about relationship, I feel like the biggest thing that gets in the way with one's ability to connect either with oneself or with somebody else is difficult feelings, right? So with children, we tend to stick with three basic feelings: mad, sad, scared. If I'm feeling one of those difficult feelings, it's going to be difficult for me either to connect with you or with myself. So then you bring technology into this picture of trying to help children learn how to connect, and there's going to be an impact, of course. I look at it that like there's three different ways that we can relate with technology. Either as a human being, I can directly relate with technology. So I can relate with my television, me and my television, or my device, whether it's a computer or a handheld device or a cell phone, or anything else technological. I can relate. A second option would be I can relate with another human being through technology. So I can relate via text message or email or through social networking, video games that are either community-oriented or competitive-oriented where I'm actually connecting directly with another human being. The third way would be, okay, there's a group of us and together we're relating to technology. We're watching a movie together. We're playing a cooperative game. Each of these different ways of relating to technology is going to have a different impact on the way that I connect with myself and with others, the way that I socialize. I think it's really, I wanted to just lay that out as sort of a foundation, because the question for me really isn't, how does technology affect me? But the question really is, how does technology affect my ability to connect with others and with myself? How does technology impact whether or not I'm having a difficult emotion or a not difficult emotion? And then ultimately, if I can handle my emotions, whether they're mad, sad, scared, or happy, most of us handle pretty easily. If I can handle my difficult emotions, regardless of what I'm doing technologically, how I'm relating with technology, I'm probably going to be okay. If I'm having a difficult emotion and I'm using technology as a way to avoid myself or other people because of the difficult emotion that's coming up, to me that is where I would go, okay, let's look at some other strategies.
Nice. Thanks, Christy. Thanks for getting us out of the gate. Jill, I want to follow up with you. Jill Gittinaloy, PhD, she went to Brown University and was practicing in Providence, Rhode Island for several years, moved to Colorado in 2006, where she brought her expertise as a pediatric neuropsychologist in her role as Associate Director of WINSI, the Western Institute for Neurodevelopmental Studies and Interventions. The mission is to provide excellent multidisciplinary diagnostic and treatment services to children and adults with learning disabilities, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and related behavioral disorders. The focus of her practice is working with school-age through high school students and their families to better understand their cognitive, social, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. Thanks for coming, Jill.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jill, the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests for us that we limit media exposure to no more than 2 hours per day, and for kids under 2, that we keep them away from media entirely. So this kind of runs into what I say to my kids, which is TV's rotting your brain. But I'm hoping you can kind of explain to us what's actually going on.
Right. Well, when we think about brain development, we want to think, and the interplay with electronics, we want to think about it from two different angles. One angle is what is actually happening to the brain in terms of circuitry that you're laying down, neurotransmitters that are being fired, things that can impact socialization, attention, focus, those types of behaviors. This angle is what was thought of with the research that looks at, for instance, that found that children who watched television, the more television they watched at a young age, the more attention problems they showed later. So that's thinking about television having an impact on the way the brain is developing, although there are also questions about whether those children are drawn to watch, or those children are drawn to watch television because of attention problems. The other angle that we want to look at brain development from is not necessarily what electronics, television, computers are doing to the brain, but what the child and therefore their brain is missing out on by being on the television. And the important things to think about there are, for instance, language development, socialization. Those are the types of skills that we learn in an interactive way. So sitting in front of a television, you might learn 1 or 2 vocabulary words, but you're not going to learn the accuracy of using them in a conversation with someone. You might hear on a television show how you should handle a fight, but you won't have the practice of doing that with another person. And so it's what the television, the computer, the iPad, the iPhone, all of those things are doing to keep us from avoiding developing our brains appropriately.
Thanks. Up next, we've got Dick Weeks. He is a master's degree ed specialist. He brings 45 years of educational experience to our panel. Dick created and directed the K-12 counseling program for Colorado Academy in 1979. From 1981 to 89, Dick served as the director of college placement and the dean of students at Brewster Academy in New Hampshire. In 1989, he became the dean of students and later the assistant head of school at Alexander Dawson School. Dick founded the George L. Bridge School in 1995, which he named for his grandfather. For 16 years, he served as head of Bridge School until retiring from that position and joining Catalyst High School, where he is now principal. He also teaches various psychology classes at Metropolitan State University of Denver and facilitates parenting and professional development seminars in the area. Dick, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So I was a teenager 25 years ago, and I was trying to make my way through the world. The only media we had at that point was television. But today, kids are bombarded with media, and this must be having an impact on their socialization. So I'm wondering, from your vantage point as a lifetime educator, what have you seen that highlights the impact of technology on kids' socialization today versus 25 years ago?
Great question. And for me, technology, as you've heard from the other panelists so far, goes beyond just socialization issues. But we're touching on the socialization. So what I've seen over my career is actually going from, in 45 years, no technology really, and observing lots of playfulness and creativity in young people. What I've seen over the past 25 years is that you may have young people in a common area in the past, interacting, playing games, socializing, playfulness, a lot of conversation about what's going on in their lives as well as what was going on in school that day. Now you can observe a room full, all on their text phones, texting each other instead of talking with each other. So I'm feeling that we lose the communication pieces of voice intonations, sense of humor and how that's used among young people, body language, picking up on body language for socialization skills. And also finding that I think a lot of times, and Krista, you talked about the sad and fear and glad kinds of issues in socialization. And a lot of our youth are fearful, and sometimes technology is a safe place to be. It provides a safe place and you don't have to reach out. But unfortunately, they can get stuck in that, and when they actually need to interact with others, it becomes more difficult. And there is studies on the brain circuitry, too, that actually is involved in the brain circuits involved in face-to-face communications can become weaker the longer you're, like 12 hours a day, some students are, especially teenagers these days, which may be addiction, I don't know. But anyway, that in summary, it's really the pieces of communication that we express and interact with during our day-to-day lives, one-on-one, the body language, the humor we use, the tone of voice that we might use, that gets missed if we're in technology too much.
Thanks, Steve. Tracy works with older people, young adults. Tracy Markle has her LPC. She's worked in a variety of therapeutic settings with teens, adults, and families for over 20 years. The areas she specializes in are recovery from addictions and mental illness, improved relationships, and academic and employment success. Tracy provides education, psychotherapy, and intervention support to teens, young adults, and their families who are impacted by the effects of technology dependency and drug and alcohol addiction. She owns and clinically directs Collegiate Coaching Services, a psychotherapy and young adult traditional living program specializing in independent living, recovery, and academics in Boulder. Tracy and the team of therapists she works with offer individual, family, and group therapy to teens and their families. Hi, Tracy, welcome.
Thank you.
So, in your work with kids once they're getting to college, you're seeing the fruition of years of potentially unhealthy relationships to media. And I'm wondering what the long-term impacts are of what you're noticing.
Sure. Well, I'd like to start first with a couple important facts. One of the statistics that we're faced with right now through research is young adults in the college environment. There's a rate of 13 to 18% who are addicted to technology. And the age group we're most concerned about, the fastest growing age group in regards to technology dependency, is males age 15 to 25. And so a lot of what I'm speaking to has to do with young men, and although young women struggle with internet issues such as social networking sites and what have you, young men are the group that we are seeing most of the problems with. And some of the issues that we're seeing from long-term technology dependency issues are a lack of resiliency, and that's the internal resiliency when they struggle with negative emotions and negative feelings. They have a difficult time with change, and they have a difficult time with disappointment, and it's very difficult to cope with that distress. And when they transition to the college environment, they leave the safety of their home, of their technology. They struggle with how to deal with the environment that presents a lot of different challenges to them. Along with that is an inability to cope effectively outside of utilizing technology. And so where some people who respond to stress in a healthy way may utilize talking to friends, journaling, exercise, these young adults who have a history of excessive technology use, that's their primary coping skill. And what happens is that isolates them from that college environment and keeps them within their dorm room or their apartment. And as a result of that, in that isolation, there's an increase in the chance of mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and also substance abuse. One of the other issues of great concern that we're facing with young men in particular, but also teenage boys, is the amount of time spent on the internet and video games. They're being exposed to pornography. Online pornography is very accessible to this age group, and the rate of addiction to pornography has increased greatly since technology has come into people's lives. And that's impacting their ability to have healthy, intimate relationships with others. When we see them, they come to us without any type of intimate relationship with others because their time spent in front of the computer or through video games. And that also leads to a confusion about who am I, what do I want, and how do I approach this world without technology in front of me. And so there are several more areas, but those are some of the key areas that young adults struggle with once they leave home.
Thanks, Tracy.
Sure.
Our last panelist is Debbie Elliott. Debbie has her LPC and has certifications in biofeedback. She helps people get the most out of their mental performance, whether they are challenged by mental illness or whether they want to push already exceptional talents to new levels. Debbie heads her leading biofeedback and neurofeedback clinic, Interactive Brain Analysis, in Boulder, Colorado. Her diverse team improves patients' lives impacted by attention deficit, learning disabilities, and other disorders. Debbie, I want to come at this from a different angle because you're helping kids with a variety of mental health and cognitive challenges, and your interventions are promoting, among other things, child socialization. And the technology that you're working with is cutting edge. It's fascinating. I'm just curious about, here's these great examples of how technology is really improving the lives of the kids that you're working with. And I'm wondering if you can tell us more about what today's neurofeedback is doing with kids.
Yes, I love technology. I think it is a wonderful thing, but there's a time and a place for it. It can't be the only thing that goes on. But so what I do is use computers and different technology systems to look at the physiological responses in children and adults and see what is going on with their bodies and teach them what they are doing. So in socialization can be really scary to people. We look at it's in the limbic brain, and when we give eye contact, it can actually get the amygdala fired, and you go into the fear response. So how do we teach people how to get excited or how to relax to be able to meet the task of relating to each other? And through using biofeedback and neurofeedback, we're offered this wonderful tool of really having some deep insights with children and adults to see what they are doing to promote health and happiness and to meet the tasks that they want to do at hand. So I like technology.
Thanks. All right, I want to pause for a moment and just acknowledge some of the folks that have made this event possible. Pathways to Parenting Success is a collaboration between the Boulder Valley School District and BPS. We have a number of sponsors in addition to the Boulder Valley School District. The Louisville Public Library, the Parent Engagement Network, the Daily Camera, Centennial Peaks Hospital, the Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance, Boulder Counseling Cooperative, the Hope Foundation, and the Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library out of Broomfield. I want to thank all of those sponsors for making this possible. We are going to shift into a question and answer section of our time tonight, and I'm going to be focusing initially on questions around if, when, and how to introduce and monitor technology with our kids. I want to let the viewers out here know that if you have questions, you can submit them on those pieces of paper to me, and if you are watching from home, you can get onto the BoulderPsychologicalServices.com website, and you can ask questions from there. I believe it's also possible to be on the BVSD website and ask your questions, submit them live that way. Our first question. This is from a mom. She says, my 12-year-old daughter is just finishing 6th grade. Currently, she hates me because I have refused to let her have her own cell phone. She tells me that every single one of her friends has one, and it's the only way they communicate. I'm just afraid she'll either lose it or misuse it. Any advice? Who wants to lead us off?
I'll take that.
All right, Jill.
Sure.
Jill.
So one of the things that's really important to consider when you're asking any of these questions is, what is my child like, rather than looking at this in general. Of course, it's very important to establish what your own family's parameters are and to be able to stick with those just like you would anything else that you're going to set a ground rule for. Certain kids who are in the 6th grade can handle having a phone, and you can set up the rules around those. They don't have to be fancy, expensive phones. They can be phones that are used primarily for contacting their friends. They can earn them using, chore money, those types of things, and they can have very specific limits around what time does the phone get turned off at night. Am I allowed to bring the phone to school or not? Do I just use it after school for trying to make plans? So I think really the most important thing to consider is, what is your child like? Can your child follow the rules that you set? Can your child be responsible and make decisions based on those answers that you get thinking about your own child?
Thanks. Any others? Tracy.
I think and I agree with that. And the only thing I would add is I do validate your daughter's anger. In today's time and age, she's being left out of a lot of communication. Teens are communicating a lot through texts and emails and sending pictures, and I can understand why she would feel upset, because she's not able to be a part of her group in the truest sense. And I find that with technology today and our young people, it's a part of who they are and a part of their identity development.
Nice. Can we talk about maybe some of the health that could come from there? What is healthy about the identity development? What is healthy about these social ways of interacting with technology? For example, I was talking to a mom who said her daughter texts 3,000 times a month. And I thought, well, my gosh, that's outrageous. How can someone function in the rest of their world? And then I went home and found that the average 16-year-old texts 3,000 times a month. So this was the norm. And I'm not saying that norm is healthy, but I'm wondering, what health do you see from the ways that kids are now able to interact with technology?
We have so many wonderful things of how we're so interconnected with the world right now. Mm-hmm. It's like this World Wide Web that we have every resource. That can be overwhelming. I like to come back to the family system and see what their belief system is around technology and how they want to develop together. I love when the child has that dialogue with their family to tell them what they would like, and to figure out what the rules are. I really think that is the key of what are the rules, and how do we encourage our family systems to be able to do that.
Thanks.
And I see one of the real benefits is, here's something that you're going to learn how to use, be responsible for, and Debbie's right, including family values and the family system of how we're all going to use technology, especially within the family unit. But I think there's a lot of health around learning that responsibility and how to use it. The problem that I see in older kids is the online kinds of things that they can get involved in, and the predators that can get connected with preteens and teens. So that is a discussion a family should have. If you're going to have this cell phone, you're going to have this iPad, you're going to have this computer, what are the cautions? What are the things we need to be aware of to take care of their emotional and personal health that way?
Thanks. I want to look at younger kids. This is a question about 2-year-olds. So I'm sure we've all seen little kids now playing with iPhones, playing with iPods. They can turn them on. This question is about, says, my 2-year-old is playing memory games on my phone. And of course, I can talk about developing hand-eye coordination, but now she's also playing Angry Birds. When does this get to be a problem? Are there things that are helpful? I mean, I have a 5-year-old who can do tanagrams on the phone. I think, well, he's doing a puzzle. So what's the line here, you guys? Yeah, Christy.
I love this question. Because what you're really asking is, at what point does the child, is it clear that this is affecting the child in a negative way as opposed to helping develop their brain and, in this case, their memory or their hand-eye coordination with Angry Birds? Love Angry Birds. I think the question to always go back to when you're looking at your own child and their relationship with technology is, okay, am I able to make contact with this child while they're engaged with the game? Because if the game is so all-consuming and the child's focus is so all-consumed in whatever it is that they're doing, and they aren't able to stop and take a break and make human contact, then there's a good high likelihood, I would say, that the child is avoiding and using the game or the phone as an avoidance strategy. If the child is simply enjoying themselves and engaged happily in what they're doing, they'll easily be able to stop and take a break and make contact with a parent or any other person trying to stop them. So I think that's a great way to start to look at, okay, can I make contact? Or is this like, do not talk to me, my focus is so intent that clearly there may be more going on.
That's a great distinction, thanks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jill.
The other thing to think about with children, like I said earlier, is what are they missing out on? So if they're spending just a few minutes playing these games, that's one thing. If they're spending a lot more time playing these games, then they're really missing out on the opportunity for other types of development, whether it's socializing with a parent, with siblings, with peers at a playground. So that's one piece, is how much time are they spending on electronics at such a young age? The other piece is that all of us parents will sometimes use electronics in a specific way. For instance, we're at a doctor's office and we have a few minutes where we really need them to sit quietly and they're not wanting to sit quietly. And that can be okay too, but we also have to remember that we don't want to avoid the opportunity to teach them. So that if we're always using electronics in the moment to keep them calm while we're cooking dinner or keep them calm while we're going to an appointment, they're never having the opportunity to learn to keep themselves calm. So there are a couple of different ways to think about it in terms of time, in terms of are you avoiding the difficult task of teaching them something that's difficult to learn, but they need to learn as they develop.
Nice, thanks. You have something, Tracy?
Sure. One of the things that I encourage for parents is to pay attention to your own technology use and your attitudes towards technology, and that will dictate your children's technology use and their attitude towards it. And I think it's important that we as adults have our own boundaries around technology and we're able to put the phone down when we're having conversations with our child. And it's about modeling that behavior and being able to deal with feelings and emotions instead of getting behind that screen. And I think that applies to our children as young as 2 years old and older.
Thanks. Boy, we have a great question from our viewing audience. I think this represents something that a lot of people are concerned with when their son goes to college. So this is, what are the statistics of young men not succeeding at college because, unlike at home, they have unlimited access to video games? Even if they're not in a dorm room, they can be used at the college center or at friends' houses. How can parents deal with this?
You got to educate them when they're teenagers.
Educate them when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
You want to say more about that, Debbie?
Well, all of their habits are formed earlier on, and so how do we organize it that way? Video games are not necessarily bad, but when you do them in excess, they're really detrimental. So playing with that, with the teenagers, getting them to enjoy being outside, to have other interests, or when they're on technology, how do we use it for educational purposes and creativity? With Instagram and all of the other things, people are making pictures and really educating in a certain way, and I love seeing what they can do with that. But how are they setting up being able to see their full life, of acknowledging that they're going to school and to need to do their schoolwork and they want to hang out with their friends and, all the different things. And so time management is a huge place for that, of trying to figure out, what can you do? It's always interesting to see that freshman year of what kids will do. But if we can educate them when they're teenagers, I think it really helps them understand the boundaries and the goals and what to do when they're on their own.
Tracy, you're running a program this summer. I'm wondering if this relates.
Sure. We are offering a therapeutic group to teen men, teen boys who struggle with technology dependence issues and an inability to connect with others. And so it's an opportunity to come and experience the outdoors and an experiential nature and connect with like-minded peers, but face-to-face, and to unplug just for a couple hours a week to see if there's a way to feel good about face-to-face interaction versus time spent on the computer. This group starts June 5th, and you can go to our website, Collegiate Coaching Services, to learn more about it.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. All right, we've got another viewing audience question. As a parent, I am wondering how texting and Facebook chatting affect girl-boy relationships, especially in early adolescence. It's not like when we were in high school or junior high. Do you have advice for parents?
I better jump on that one.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, unfortunately what I see is that, again, sometimes technology provides a safe place to verbalize some feelings that don't always express what you really mean. It's a safe place to hide and really not confront the person so that you don't know how to work with conflict. I mean, that's a piece that's going to get missed. You're opening yourself to hurt, I think, a lot of times it's hard to interpret some of the words that we use in texting. And the language we use is, short OMGs and all those kinds of things that is actually probably changing language. And to me, I've seen some really tough interactions that happen because it's taken the wrong way. The text message is taken the wrong way, or the Facebook post is taken the wrong way. Or if I get mad at somebody, I can post a picture of them doing something stupid. Or it's not always a safe place to interact. I think a lot of kids forget that it's public. It's public. So I'm going to say something to John, and John's going to say something to Samantha, but everybody's watching it. Anybody connected to them can see it. So it's a broad thing that they forget about. And again, for parents, I guess you pick up on body language messages at home or changes in behavior that somebody's down and out because they've had this breakup over the text or breakup over Facebook or you name it. It all happens. And again, I worry about the safety of all that sort of public knowledge that's out there. But that would be, where I would start from anyway.
I think we have time for one more comment before the video.
I was just going to add to that to say that the other thing that's I think is important, and we're probably hearing repeatedly throughout these answers to questions, is that the key is to have conversations with your children, and technology is probably forcing us to have more conversation with our children rather than less. And starting at an earlier age, it can be one of the advantages, like in answer to the mom who asked about her 6th grader, about allowing technology early, because they're going to get exposed to it eventually, whether it's when they're off at college by themselves or at this age. And if you can introduce it at an age at which they're still willing to have conversation with you and listen to you, and then let them practice with some of these boundaries in terms of time or in terms of communicating over Facebook, make mistakes, check in with them, change some of that, give them the practice before they're off and on their own, you're going to put your children at an advantage.
Nice, thanks. We're going to show a video of Jane McGonigal. She is a video game designer who also focuses her game designs on pro-social gaming. It's a cool video. And
Time filler?
right, she's on YouTube. She also has a TED Talk that's fantastic, but that was 20 minutes, so we decided on this short one. And
Give me a minute.
It's coming.
Lisa, can I dig into another question? Oh, here we go.
The thing I'm most passionate about right now is changing how we talk about games and how we talk about gamers. We have a number of generations who have grown up being told that they have wasted their time or wasted their lives playing games. People like me who adore games and feel like the best versions of ourselves when we play, and we're told that it's a waste of time, that we should have been doing something else. Well, we didn't do something else, and kids today aren't doing something else. Kids are playing more hours per week than any generation before. And instead of just wringing our hands and telling people that what they love is bad for them, I think we need to change that message. We need to look at what games are doing for gamers, the skills that we're developing, the relationships that we're forming, the heroic qualities that we get to practice every time we play, like resilience, like perseverance and grit and determination, like having epic ambitions and the ability to work with other players, sometimes thousands of other players at the same time. There are a couple of concerns that come up often when we talk about video games. The first is addiction, and that's definitely a real problem. You know, what I've discovered is that games do a better job in many ways of providing the things that we crave most. You know, whether it's a sense of satisfying hands-on work where we can really see the outcomes of our actions, or a chance to succeed and get better at something, to start out being really bad and then have the sense of mastery as we get better and better. Gamer addiction is not about necessarily the quality of the games being somehow fundamentally, they just grab us and we can't escape. It's really about what they offer us that the real world sometimes does a terrible job of offering us. And it is hopefully our goal to take those things that we get from games and find ways to have them in our real lives too. The other big concern that people have about games is violence, of course. There's no evidence that gaming makes you more violent. In fact, a study came out just last week showing that gamers who play violent games that require strategy with your teammates or cooperation with other players to beat the bad guys are actually much more cooperative in the game and in real life, that they're actually honing skills of cooperation, not skills of violence. And this makes perfect sense because when you're playing a game with other players, you're not actually being violent, right? You have to actually work with the other players. You have to trust them to finish the game. You have to work with your teammates. You have to communicate. There's no actual violence involved, right? The actual effort involved is highly collaborative, highly trustworthy, highly social. So the message needs to be, this is training for real life. You know, yes, games are escapist in that we do get to escape reality when we play them, but they're not just escapist. They're also returnist. We return to our real lives with real ways of thinking about what we're capable of, real ways of solving problems more creatively. And this is the great news for the gamer generations, that we have spent our lives planting this seed, planting this capability, and now we can take those skills and abilities to real challenges, whether they're things like overcoming concussions, the way that I use my gamer way of thinking to deal with that, or tackling global challenges like climate change and curing cancer and overcoming political corruption. There are games to do all of these things now that you can play. You can bring your gamer abilities and help save the real world. So if you have a gamer in your life, or if you are a gamer, the good news is you are ready, they are ready to do extraordinary things in their real lives.
Thanks, Jane. So, you guys, what do you think? If you were responding to some of the statements she's making about gaming, agree, disagree? Yeah, start us off, Christy.
So I could pick it apart, honestly. I could spend an hour just on that video. The biggest comment that I have in response to that is I think that she makes a point to say video games fill in where sometimes the real world doesn't provide, right? And for me, I just fundamentally believe that ultimately what we all want in life is to feel connected and accepted for exactly who we are. And if I'm turning to video games to fill that need, to provide that for me, that to me is a huge red flag. So I would want kids to engage in video games to have fun and enjoy connection with other people in the room, or to enjoy connection with their friend down the street playing the same game, or to just relax and enjoy their own, time by themselves for a limited amount of time. But again, to be able to know that my child could stop and engage with a real human being, that to me would be the biggest piece. It's like real human connection and real true sense of I'm connected and loved and accepted for who I am right now, I think is ultimately what we all want. And so I would want our children to feel that. And if video games is fulfilling that gets me sticky.
Thanks. Tracy.
Jane McGonigal is interesting in that this video, I think, displayed a certain side of her. She's a well-known speaker when it comes to video game development. She wrote a book called Reality is Broken. And in that book and her online interviews and the TED Talks, she does speak to moderate play and encourages between 7 and 21 hours a week, which is very moderate compared to the issues that we're concerned about with young men and women who are playing over 100 hours a week of video games or on the internet. And so although she does reference that video games can be a really healthy response to things they're not getting in their life, she's also able to respond to it in a moderate way where she's encouraging the pro-social connection. She's encouraging that people play video games together in the same room versus isolated individually behind a screen, where they're playing violent video games with strangers. She identifies that playing violent video games with strangers does increase the chance for violence outside the video game. And so I think that she, through this video, she definitely, hear her speak out of both sides of her mouth. And she's powerful in the industry because she's a video game developer. But it's important to recognize that the games that she develops are focused on positive emotion and health, not the games that we're concerned about, which are the most addictive games are the first-person shooter games, the multiplayer role-playing games. I don't think she's speaking of those games.
Thanks. Dick.
I agree. The issue around, there's so much research out now. You can just get online and find research that supports either side of these things. But the violence and aggression, I just had my psychology class at Metro write articles on different research done on a variety of things, but there were 2 students that did a thing on gaming, a paper on gaming, and one came up with, yes, it does lead to a little more aggressive behavior, and the other said, probably watched some of Jane's or worked with Jane's games. But they also do provide the strategy, problem-solving skills. I have seen personally with my own son, perseverance, trying to get to a certain goal of creating some huge anxiety and stress. So that's a piece that I don't think a lot of people look at sometimes, is trying to get to that other level or trying to stay alive or whatever it is. That there's enough anxiety in our young people today to not be adding to it. So again, family monitoring and family engagement of talking about, what's going on in that gaming thing that you're using. I think that's always important. We've said it probably 10 times tonight, but that's my side.
Thanks. Debbie.
I use a lot of video games for cognitive strategies and skills to teach kids. So there's so much you can be doing. Lumosity is a big one. Happy Neuron is another one on the internet where they're really into neuroscience and learning how to do different things, reaction time, problem solving, attention stuff, and a multitude of things. And so parents often come in and say, well, should we be doing all of these games? And I said, there is a place for that, but there's also going outside and throwing the ball and seeing the ball come at you, and the interaction you're having with the person creates probably even more of different connections in the brain than just playing this flat screen video games. But there's, we need all of it. And how do we offer a whole range of different things for people to see what they relate to and how they learn and doing things with technology or just together?
Thanks.
Could I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think it's creating a good mix for our young people. And I just read, I think it was in the Camera, a little short article about having some teens go off without their Wi-Fi connections for a week of hiking and just being out in nature, and then studying brain activity and seeing that their thought process had increased and that their creativity had increased. Where do we get to play in the dirt anymore? There's good bacteria in dirt. So I think it's trying to create balance in our lives, all of us, adults and our children, especially around technology. And technology is a part of our lives. I mean, teens, it's a piece of them. So when you work with cell phones and things, just remember that is, it's their right arm, their right hand at this point. It's their connection to the greater world in a lot of ways.
Boy, that's a great segue to a question that was submitted online for us. Many adolescents are addicted to their phones. When parents take the phone away, often the ultimate consequence, some kids even resort to destructive behavior out of despair of losing their phone, or in parentheses here, their life. What do you suggest as intervention for families who deal with adolescents who are truly addicted to their phones? Tracy.
I think it's important to set up agreements with your children ahead of time, and this is being proactive and creating an agreement where they know what the expectations are around their technology use and what the consequences will be if certain behaviors occur. And losing the cell phone is a really great consequence, and it's an attention grabber. But I think teens in particular will respond better if they know ahead of time what will occur. And I think the other piece to speak to as far as the concern around the addiction is there is a behavioral addiction that occurs. And we do find that the same parts of the brain light up that cause chemical dependency, and those areas of the brain light up. It's the same area. And when teens are using cell phones and the rings occur and the different bells and whistles happen, whether there's a Facebook update, there's a text message coming through, or what have you, a little bit of dopamine is released each time they hear that. It's like intermittent reward system. And so when you do drastically take that phone away, in a sense, they're experiencing some level of withdrawal. I'm not getting that feel-good chemical. It's not being released. I'm not hearing my bells and whistles. And I think it's important for parents to recognize that, plan ahead, prepare, because if you do take it away without them being aware that will occur, they probably will act out in their behavior.
Thanks. Anybody else? All right. I like this next question. A while back, a mom approached me about her 15-year-old daughter. She had been secretly, this is the mom, had been secretly reading her daughter's text messages and learned that, 1, her good friends were mad at her and threatening to abandon her. 2, mom had been lied to about abstinence from drugs and sex. And 3, the daughter's boyfriend seemed like a real jerk. She wanted to confront her daughter about these texts and what she had learned. Any advice for mom? Jill.
I'll answer that, and I think it really is in line with what was just previously stated, that this is something that needs to be set up in advance. What are the parents going to be allowed to see? Sneaking in and looking at text messages without having the agreement that is open and available is like sneaking in and reading a diary, and it's really impinging on, especially in adolescents, developing independence. So the idea would be to say in advance, if that's something that you want to set up as a family, I'm allowed to look at your text messages anytime that I want, if I want to check in on that, and that would have to be an agreement that the parent and the adolescent come to. But to do that after the fact and not let it be known that you're going to be doing that, unless you have something that you're specifically concerned about, like a drug use issue, and you're trying to figure out what's going on for the safety of your child. That's a little bit different. But just sort of snooping around is probably not a good idea for keeping that relationship strong between the parent and child, and that's ultimately what you want to do in order to keep the communication open.
And if we tell them that we're going to be monitoring, is that indefinite? Is that as long as they're in our house, or is there a time in high school or some?
I would say that you need to have continual conversations about this. It's going to be very different for a young child who you've just introduced a phone to, say, in middle school, versus a senior in high school. And so this needs to be, and I know we've said this several times, but it needs to be a continuing conversation between the parent and the children about what it's going to look like in each family.
Yeah, how do we educate people? We need to educate our children how to use the technology. So everything that we put on the internet is permanent. Do the kids realize that they will not be able to get away from these things later? I really am a strong believer in parental controls and different things, that the parents really should be looking at, I think, with elementary age and even into junior high, and then starting maybe to wean off. We got to work with each individual, but to be looking at who our kids are talking to. It's really important that we create these systems before. But snooping, that goes in a direction that you lose trust with your child, and you don't want that.
Thanks. I want to ask you guys one more stump question, and then I want to go to a little diagram. So the question is about this middle schooler that I know whose parents and he are having some challenges with a sleepover plan, because he doesn't have a lot of sleepover options, and the place that he wants to go is a friend's house where the rules around video games are slightly different. And he can basically play Call of Duty all night long at his friend's house. And his parents know this, and they don't want him going to his friend's house. Nevertheless, it's the only situation that really is social for him outside of school. So how do we reconcile the pro-social stuff with the boundary around technology? Yeah, Tracy.
I don't know if I'd be really concerned. I think as a parent, especially if you have healthy boundaries at home with technology and they're not exposed to those games, there's probably not going to be the likelihood that an addiction or bad behavior will occur because of a night of playing Call of Duty. Now, is Call of Duty a game that we want to encourage our young teen boys to play? Probably not. But in a minimal way, it's more than likely not going to impact him in a negative manner.
Thanks. We have time for one more before we put up the diagram. Jill.
The only other comment that I was going to make along this line is that sometimes for children, if they are completely kept away from certain things, it makes them seek it out more later. So that this type of minimal exposure can actually be helpful. They have exposure to it. Maybe they like it, they can talk about it with their parents, and at what point can they start playing a game like that if they're really interested, or recognize that this is only something that they're going to do in a situation to maintain this social contact, but then they're not sneaking to find it, or when they finally have some independence, really going out and trying to play that game.
Okay. So does this relate back to the question about the student whose boundaries around technology at home were great, then they go to college and it's totally unboundaried? And if there's some way to have a little flexibility, right, so that they're not, like, for the first time.
And practice. That's you're really building in executive functioning. You don't just want to say, I'm going to do this all for you. I'm going to set up all the boundaries. I'm going to set up all the rules. And then here you have to go to college, and now you have to do it on your own. But you're really practicing those skills. Or what are my own boundaries? What are my limits? How much time can I spend on video games and get my homework done? And let them practice and step in when you need to help, but let them try and figure it out as they're getting older. Early on, obviously, parents are going to be setting all the boundaries and the limits and teaching what happens on the internet or with games. But as children get older, you want to let them experiment a little bit, and you're there to support them before they're off on their own.
Nice, thanks. We have a diagram that I want to look up on the screen. This is a description of different types of media addiction, and what I'm hoping to do is to kind of get a little, wow, that's, maybe you at home can see that. That's beautiful. But what we're hoping to accomplish is the idea that we have more than just the kind of classic male video gaming addiction behavior, and that there's actually several different categories of addiction that we want to be looking for. And I'm wondering, boy, Tracy, is there a way that you can, from there, talk about what's going on?
Sure. Well, I appreciate you highlighting this because I think it's important for families to know that there are different types of internet addiction. And a lot of times I'll have parents say, well, my child is just computer programming and that's what they love and that's what they want to do for their career. So what's wrong with them doing that for 8-10 hours a day? And what you just saw up on the TV was that number 5, the computer addiction. It highlights that too much time spent on technology is a problem and does create that addiction because of the way that the brain responds to that technology and the reward system. And it also highlights the fact that women can also have a dependency to internet, and that is in the area of the social networking sites, developing emotional relationships online, as well as eBay and the shopping networks. Young men in particular engage and spend a lot of time in the area of the information overload, watching hours and hours of YouTube videos and streaming Netflix videos. And that is as big of an issue today, from my point of view, as video games and internet, the YouTube and the Netflix streaming that occur online.
Thanks. Anyone else want to comment on the... All right, we've got time, I think, for one more question, and the question that I want to ask hits home for me, which is, I've heard it said that as adults, we are all suffering from some low level of digital addiction disorder, and this has been described to me as this phenomenon of kind of compulsively checking our phone. It's like, did someone email me? Is there a new text message? Do I have something on Facebook? And so we kind of go around. It's like a little Easter egg hunt where you never know what you're going to find, and it's just so exciting. And it's almost like a gambler who's sort of pulling the slot machine. Who knows when the reward is going to happen? And it kind of feeds that same sort of addictive energy. I have to admit, as a father of 4 children, that I see myself getting sort of sucked into digital media, my phone, my iPad. Is there any hope for me? What advice do you have for my family? And of course, everybody else listening.
Turn off your phone, Dan.
Turn off my phone. Thank you. You guys are all sort of raising your hand. Okay, Jill, yeah.
Well, I think the key is, which it's almost helpful to have children. We often talk about our children being our best teachers. And so if you can look at your children and think, how much time do I want them spending doing this? It can remind us to not do it ourselves. That if the message from my child is, I don't want you to have the telephone or other digital device at the dinner table, well, then mine certainly shouldn't be at the dinner table. And all of the rules that you're thinking about setting up for your kids at these various ages, you can start to implement yourself, and then it just sets up the entire family system to be that way.
No, I'd go back to creating that balance within the family, and what you're saying is modeling. I frequently see young children getting picked up at school, kids getting in the SUV, screen pops down from the roof, from the ceiling, and there's no discussion about, how was the day going and what did you learn and what was the best about today. And so I think it is about balance and trying to create models for them that, if you're going to be at dinner, everybody has their technology turned off, even the answering machine and the landline, if you still have one. I do, but to me, that's kind of what it's about. And we've been saying a lot, I think, every one of us tonight, about open discussion in the family about where technology fits in our unit.
Well put. Boy, I want to thank the panelists. You guys have been really, really great. Thank the audience, BVSD, Lisa Collins, for helping us out. This has been a really wonderful evening for me. Thank you and the viewing audience. And I hope everybody's gotten some benefit from thinking about technology and how to work with it with our kids. What you got?
And now the planet started bowing down, and soon the growth returns to follow ground. But I know what's churning underneath the snow, and I love my baby, and we've miles to go. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Be with me. We'll beat this, can't you see? So wait a while, winter time. Wait a while, winter time.